It was a beautiful masterpiece, even more exciting than Star Wars, filled with sensational dialogue and heartwarming comedy. The zoo animals take us on an exciting adventure through the wild, rivaling The Godfather, Citizen Kane, and Star Wars for the greatest cinematic experience of all time with superb animation. I love this movie. Now you might think that was a joke, but Mr. Ben D wrote this review in 2005, before comedy was invented.
Das voortbest dieser Art bietet Rubland, wo andere Millionen Menschen in wahrhaft fanatiert.
Now I actually went through the effort of translating this one, and I mean, yeah, whatever. This one's my favorite. It's not an excellent movie, but to be fair, it's rather perfect. The animation is nice. Don't stop recording. Oh, for fuck's sake.
Oh guys, you like Madagascar?
I'm not.
You like to move it.
I'm not putting
I
this.
like to move
Get
it,
out,
move it.
get out, Lucas,
I like
get
to
out.
move it.
Get out. I'm
You
not
like to move it.
It's not going. It's not going.
Rico! 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 Kowalski! Move it!
This movie was doomed from the second it was conceived, so here's how the story goes. In 2006, Disney released a movie called The Wild. The synopsis goes as follows. An adolescent lion is accidentally shipped from the New York Zoo to Africa. Now running free, his zoo pals must put aside their differences to help bring him back. And yes, I did go out of my way to watch the film, but I don't want to talk about it. That aside, you may think based on the timing that this was a ripoff of Madagascar, when in reality it was the other way round. Apparently, Dreamworks somehow caught wind of The Wild when it was in early development. I guess there was a mole at Disney somewhere, and so they immediately started working on Madagascar with the intent of releasing it before The Wild so they could essentially steal all the revenue. And it worked! Madagascar made over $500 million and The Wild flopped. The outcome of this, however, is that Madagascar was rushed for an unrealistic deadline, undoubtedly contributing to its reduced quality. Nowhere is this more evident than in the animation. Madagascar has without a doubt some of the worst animation I've seen in big budget animation, and the excuse of it being released in 2005 doesn't work here, because the same company released Shrek 2 a year earlier, and that film still holds up amazingly. Madagascar looked awful even for the time. I'll start off with the character design of our four main characters. This is a lion. Beautiful, majestic, gorgeous creatures of nature. Just absolute, incredible animals. Fierce, terrifying predators of the jungle. Now this is Alex. I can't even believe that this was greenlit and accepted because god does he look ugly. This isn't a lion. Why are his hands so fucking big? And why is his chest weird that he looks anorexic? The entire design is so blocky, which I guess some people might not mind, but I certainly do. A lion's mane is the equivalent of a human's hair pretty much, and hair is an extremely difficult and tedious part of animation. The way it reacts to the environment as well as the movement of said character, it's almost never static. Brave was almost solely marketed by its hair physics. Everyone was freaking out about it in 2012. If Merida had shorter, straighter, or more basic hair, the film no doubt wouldn't have done as well. Hair is everything. I mean, it just goes to show the importance of good character design. In many scenarios, a great character design is enough to save a franchise, and that's that. Dreamworks completely skirts around this issue with this fucking lion, however, saving both time and money by just having a block that barely moves at all as its mane. And it looks like trash. Just look at his stupid face. The same thing goes with Zebra. The hair is just an awful fucking looking block. They all look like goddamn Roblox characters. Bask upon this real zebra, and then look at Marty. Total square. I mean, come on, just look at how horrible this is. Gloria the hippo looks more like a fat sea lion with tiny stubby legs than an actual hippopotamus. And they're always showing her ass, like really weird close-ups on her ass all the time. Who the fuck spent so much time rendering this hippo's ass? Melman's face is fucking weird, his neck pisses me off, and he's the most uncanny giraffe I've ever seen. You've also got this thing, which I thought looked particularly grim. He's also apparently 35, which is just, why would you even need to specify that? It's not just the designs, however, it's also the animation itself, which looks like it's been rendered at like 10 frames per second. The backgrounds are super shitty and lazy, the movements are god-awful. I guess the penguins are okay, but they're so simple it barely counts. I've just realized I haven't actually talked about the movie at all. I don't really want to be honest, so I guess I'll just speed through some of my favorite #epic moments. The first act was probably the best part of the film, but I'm assuming the looming threat of a deadline set in, so they put a lot less effort on writing the rest of the movie. But the first act contains this horrifying shot, so it's definitely not art or anything. These 4 main characters are all cunts. Some stupid asshole thought it would be a great idea to name the zebra Marty and the giraffe Melman. Why, as a writer, you would choose to have 2 characters with names that similar is beyond me. Not to mention the fact that those are just such stupid names, especially Melman. I even managed to find a Facebook group dedicated to shitting on Melman. It's called I Hate Melman from Madagascar, and has great posts like this. This one's pretty good too. I'd love to shove that log so far up his rectum. These guys really fucking hate Melman.
Wake up, you filthy monkey.
But these 2 aren't even monkeys. They're chimps, which are apes. You could have searched that up easily in 2005. Could they just not be bothered? They probably just didn't care, to be honest. I can't really blame them. Zebra guy runs away from the zoo and the others go to save him, but they end up being shipped to Madagascar. And some genius thought it would be a good idea for Gloria's box to have light holes at the top, even though there is literally nowhere the light could be coming from. We learn that the ship is going to Kenya so the animals can return to their natural habitats. But why the fuck would they be sending the penguins to Kenya? Then they all fall off and land in Madagascar. I mean, they should be dead. Those boxes weren't totally enclosed. They should have definitely all drowned by now. And I guess Melman's box shrunk because he could perfectly fit in it just a minute ago. King Julian's dumb and has some plan to befriend the 4 to scare the Fuso away, but then Lion munches Zebra's asshole and they all reject him. I can't help but question what the rules are though. Surely if it's the wild, this kind of thing should be pretty accepted. I mean, they eat fish later in the movie and that's all good. Why are some animals okay but others aren't? The third act was extremely frustrating. The penguins come back and then Alex scares the Fuso again and the movie ends. It's all so confusingly paced that I'm finding it very difficult to describe. This is everything an animated movie shouldn't be. It's everything a movie shouldn't be. It's ugly, boring, drags out, paced confusingly, written horribly, rushed dramatically, never should have really existed in the first place. I have nothing more to say about Madagascar. I essentially use this first film as an excuse to display my hatred towards these character designs. In terms of everything else, the sequels are a lot easier to talk about because things actually happen. Needless to say, this first one is undoubtedly the worst film that Dreamworks has ever made. At least there are parts of Shark Tale you could enjoy ironically. After this film's release, Dreamworks was put in a very awkward position. They've essentially created this product with the most awful concepts, the worst characters, the ugliest style ever seen on the big screen, and I think that they planned to just fuck Disney and leave it at that. I'm not sure they were anticipating just how well this movie would do. After a success of this scale, the wisest business decision would be to make a sequel, of course. So now Dreamworks is stuck with this absolutely terrible property, and they need to curate groups of extremely talented artists and writers to make more of them. And, well, let's see how that turned out. I mean, right off the bat, this movie is called Madagascar Escape to Africa because the animals take a plane that crashes in Africa. But Madagascar is already in Africa, so the characters were already in Africa. They've been in Africa for fucking yonks. I think they've realized that they exhausted everything they could have done in the first film, so they pull a classic Dreamworks and had the main character meet a parent that wasn't touched upon before. Real original, that one. And if you wanted proof that they never planned on these sequels, that birthmark that is totally integral to this story is nowhere to be seen in the original. And it even disappears seemingly at random in this one, only showing up when it's plot convenient. Like, how is that even possible? This is computer animation. There shouldn't be that many character models for this singular character. How hard is it to maintain this basic piece of consistency? Anyway, let's talk about this shit show. One of the first new characters we're introduced to is this guy who looks and acts like a really badly animated Scar. So they use I Like to Move It again to start the film, and we're immediately reminded that the next hour and a half is going to be sickening when we get to see Hippo's bum in all its glory. Only now it's animated slightly better.
So we can really see the jiggles. Ah yes, this is what I want. This is nice, movie. Baby, Thank you, movie. So sexy.
Then the bar is set even lower by King Julian, who is just fucking awful. Look at me, I'm a boy dressed as a girl, haha. Yet again, the penguins are the best part of the film, which really isn't saying much, but there's a really out there joke about incest that's kind of hilarious.
Gently now, you just want to kiss the ground. Just a little peck, a smooch like you're kissing your sister.
In fact, much like the first film, the first act is clearly the high point. It has most of the good jokes and the most interesting animation. I actually really like the plane crash sequence, it was weirdly interesting and dynamic, but the film sort of nosedives alongside said plane because post-crash it all turns to shit. I mentioned earlier that there was a weird incest joke told by the penguins, and I find this particularly interesting because to me, the penguins represent the inner demons and desires of the crew working on this film. Through these 4 characters, you catch glimpses of how little of a fuck this team of talented people give about this property. Conversations are written about topics that kids would have no interest or knowledge in. Things like class separation and democracy and communism and trade unions, and some others I've probably forgotten about. It's just such a fascinating view at what happens when skilled workers are forced to work on something they know is terrible, because that's just the business that they're in. So now the story splits into like 5 or 6 underdeveloped sections, and it sort of becomes a competition of which one is the least likable. I would say my least favorite is the hippo one with Moto Moto. It's really stupid and boring, and I don't want to talk about it at all. Gloria's the worst, by the way. The one female character in your roster, and her motivation is like,
I might join the breeding program.
You know, I was thinking, when we get back, I might just sign up for the breeding program.
she's just such a terribly written woman. Then there's Zebra, who meets like 300 Zebra who are all the same as him. They're all even voiced by Chris Rock. But that's fucking stupid, because there's no women. Are all the zebras gay? How are they even alive? How do they reproduce? I guess they're all the same age as well. I mean, I didn't see any baby or elderly zebras. Isn't this the dumbest fucking thing in the world? How the fuck were they all born at the same time? What a stupid plotline. And considering this miraculous supernatural mass miracle of simultaneous asexual zebra birth, how the fuck could Martin genuinely get mad at Alex for not being able to tell them apart when that was kind of the whole fucking point? It's just such a forced version of the bullshit we need the main characters to fall out so they can immediately be friends again like 10 minutes later cliche. And then the resolution to Marin's arc is that Alex can tell them apart based on the bite on Marlowe's asshole. So the moral is that he's not special, really. He really is just the exact same as all the others. There is absolutely nothing unique about him. A somewhat apt metaphor for this fucking movie. It also doesn't help that much like the birthmark, the bite mark only shows up when it's convenient to the plot, which is literally once. Now on to Alex himself. He meets his parents, and look, I understand that this movie is set in Africa, so it makes sense for African actors to play a lot of the characters in the film, namely Alex's parents, who have very stereotypical African-American voices and accents. But it kinda doesn't work when their biological son has the voice of Ben fucking Stiller, who is excessively Caucasian. So it just creates this weird, incredibly off-putting contrast in voice acting that I can't help but find kind of hilarious.
Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
My mom and Dad. I've got a mom and dad. My baby is alive. Dad.
My son. My son is home.
Like, they are so clearly not related, it's unbelievable. Scar tricks Alex into getting his ass beat, and then now Scar is the alpha lion, I guess, so he banishes Alex the lion from the watering hole, who never actually really leaves, so it's incredibly confusing what it means that he's banished. Then the watering hole dries off and Alex fucks off with Marty to bring the water back, and what a surprise, the skill possessed by the main character that was constantly being said to be useless ends up saving the day in an extremely specific scenario, and said character isn't as useless as everyone thought. Whilst this is all going on, we get my favourite plot concerning Giraffe, who straight up falls into a state of depression and becomes straight up suicidal. And for some reason I find that really funny just because of how bizarre it is. Melman is just such an fucking ugly, weird character, and now he wants to kill himself because he has some disease that he'll never get to fuck his sexy hippo love interest. And so the only appropriate course of action is to throw himself into a fucking volcano in front of everyone to appease some water gods. I cannot believe the sentence I just uttered. But like the gods, the gods aren't real, but that's okay because the little rat comes along and the shark falls into the volcano. I'm just gonna stop there, but this whole thing is getting ridiculous now. I guess this film wasn't as ugly as the first film, but the animators are now stuck with these terrible main characters who make enjoying the film visually near impossible despite aspects of the presentation being fairly adequate. Like this scene here. That's a pretty nice shot. It's tough to beat a beautiful African sunset, but in my opinion, it's totally ruined by these 4 fucking cuboids of pixels that sour every goddamn shot. Look at how much better the zebras look when they're not disgustingly cartoony. I mean, how lazy can you be? They literally just Control-C, Control-V'd Martha like 100 times. There were some extremely noticeable reused voice lines too, and that got pretty distracting. Madagascar 2 is marginally better than its predecessor, and that's it. It's still horrendous. Whenever I feel slightly tempted to give the film an amount of credit or slack, I'm quickly reminded of dumb shit like Moto Moto. I mean, the closing shot is of all the central characters wiggling their funny epic bums as it fades to credits. And that kinda tells you all you need to know about this film. I guess if you find Jiggly Bum funny, then this film is right up your alley, baby. You can absolutely love it ironically. I like the penguins, I like the chimps, who the writers still haven't learned aren't monkeys, but that's only because they were so inappropriate and weird. I really do find a lot of enjoyment in the team just going bonkers with this awful concept, something which I'm glad to say was a lot more present in the third one. Speaking of which... Straight away, I'd like to point out the worst and best parts of the entire trilogy are in this film. The worst part being that fucking Afro Circus joke thing that I remember being annoyingly massive when this film released. And also, they used Katy Perry's Firework like 20 fucking times. One thing Madagascar 2 had over the other films is that it didn't contain nearly as many out-of-touch pop culture references, as opposed to the first and the third, which are chock-a-block full of them. Moving on. This film is the only one out of the 3 that I would consider to be competent, and it's without a doubt the best and most entertaining one. Granted, the start is very shitty and lazy. It's just further proof that the writers can't be asked to come up with a genuine explanation for how the animals actually get to Europe. And something you'll notice really soon is that this is one of those movies where the main characters are the worst part of it, which is never a good thing, obviously. Hippo and Giraffe in particular really piss me off. I fucking despise the relationship that they're in. Fucking Merlin calls Hippo honey and shit, and it's fucking weird.
Hi, honey. Okay.
Luckily, the film improves drastically when the animals inexplicably get to Europe, because it transitions into a casino heist and then into a chase scene with the villain, Officer Dubois. And this entire sequence is actually pretty great. The animators just go absolutely bonkers, and this really fun villain is moving around like a bug and like running through walls and shit. She's so over-exaggerated that it's actually pretty nice to watch. And it's also pretty goddamn funny at points, and there's a lot of neat visual gags that aren't shoved in your face.
I'm the first flying monkey!
One other thing about this film that I was impressed by was the new characters, because they actually look surprisingly good. I guess Dreamworks finally learned how to make good character models because the circus animals move around smoothly and they're voiced appropriately. The only issue with this is that there's now a stark contrast with the awful designs of the main 4, who now look even worse when compared to these new ones. It even looks like they've been rendered at a slower rate than the other ones. It's like they never bothered making new character models at any point. I mean, they're not even slightly wet after swimming all the way from Africa to fucking Europe. Madagascar 3 actually made me feel things that were nice. Something I can't even come close to saying about the other 2. At points I was thinking, well, you know, that's actually kind of good and wholesome. Or, wow, that's actually a pretty impressive choice of music right there. The resolution in particular I quite enjoyed. It makes total sense for the characters not to want to be in the zoo any longer, and it resolves the arcs nicely. I also think the circus sequence was really cool visually, and I remember being thoroughly entertained back in 2012 when I saw it in the cinema, and I was a stupid fucking child. Though the scene is admittedly soured greatly by that fucking Katy Perry song. I'm gonna stop sucking this film's dick for a second now because I don't want to be misconstrued. It's still not good. I just hate it the least. Like I said, everything involving the main characters sucked, so I'm glad they weren't in it as much, but they were definitely in it enough to make it bad. There's this diabolical subplot where King Julian gets into an abusive relationship with this mentally handicapped bear, whose eyes are completely black as if to signify that this one's not as anthropomorphic as all the other ones. The writing was total shit at points. Just look at how little effort it takes for Merlin to change his mind about Europe.
How do a lion, a zebra, a giraffe, and a hippo walk into a casino in Monte Carlo?
Monte Carlo's just a hop, skip, and a swim away.
Yeah.
Yet again, there's a lot of terribly unprofessional reused voice lines that are used so close to each other that I genuinely can't believe how it was approved.
Gotta let us in.
You are really Zerkis?
My kick your shoes!
Yes.
Absolutely.
You must all be very famous.
Yeah, we
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, the forced conflict at the end of the second act is even worse than the last film. They literally fall out and then make up the next scene. There was one ironically hysterical moment where some kid gets fucking devoured by an elephant's massive asshole, and that kid is never shown again, so I can only assume that he fucking died. There is literally no other explanation. Look, in my opinion, what 3 has over the first 2 the most is this total embrace of not giving a shit, but the team actually has fun with it this time. The first 2 films have absolutely nothing unique to offer, whereas this one, regardless of what you might think, definitely feels unique. The film acknowledges at multiple points that this whole circus shtick and plan to get home is needlessly convoluted and makes no sense whatsoever.
I don't even know why we bought a circus in the first place. We had enough dough for a plane.
Are you kidding me?
The 3 directors of this film must have told the team,
Look, guys, we've got to make this film. This is our industry. It's just what we got to do. It's fucking Madagascar. You know what you're working with. Just fucking go crazy, have fun with it, make it as wacky as you'd like.
despite the craziness, this one also works the most well as a movie. There's a clear threat that adds some semblance of tension. The pacing was also a lot better in this one. I don't really care about Madagascar, to be totally honest. I just wanted to make this video as sort of a public service announcement that these movies are fucking awful, and my hatred for the franchise exceeds any amount of love for my children that I may or may not end up having. The Penguins movie is also a thing, and I think it's a lot better than any of these films, but it was kind of a flop which essentially killed the entire series. Somewhat confusingly, because Madagascar 3 was one of Dreamworks' best performing films, so that's weird. I haven't seen the show recently, but I remember really enjoying it when I was 8, but kids are morons, so I don't know if it was good or not. On Netflix, there's a King Julian show, which I won't bother watching, and there's some god-awful Hulu original Madagascar origin story. There's also Merry Madagascar with, you know, fuck this. Just, how much Madagascar do you really need in your life? None, ideally. Bye-bye.